All right, guys, we're here at the Lorentz Skateboards booth at Esk8Con. We've got some awesome boards here, and we've got Chris going for fist bump.
What's up?
Chris and I have talked a lot online, and as you guys might know, I've recorded the first ride video on this config of the board, or very similar, without the mud guards on it already, and that video will be coming out soonish. But I figured I'd stop by to say hi and talk about the tank board, which is the version that I will not be looking at because it's a little bit of a process to put the tank wheels on. So why don't you give us a lowdown on what we've got here?
Yeah, for sure. So one thing we can say about the Major is it's like a 2-in-1 board on steroids. When you think of a 2-in-1 board, you think putting street wheels on it and then being able to put pneumatics. Well, with the Major, you've got this street setup with our low profile track and road wheels that are 200 by 60 millimeters. But this is a true off-road board. This is over-engineered so that you can kind of take it anywhere. And to do that, we've got our tank setup right here. These are massive 10-inch by 3-inch tires on a 175 millimeter hub. In order to fit these, you add extended axles in order to avoid wheel bite, but now you are able to go over or through anything in the Major's path. As you can see, these are the same board, if you can believe it, and all of our boards are equipped to add bindings into them. They have holes. Most of them are hidden under the grip tape for folks who aren't looking for that setup, but to be honest with you, you can pretty much convert it from here to here in about 30 minutes and back.
It's not too bad.
It's really simple, and then you've got this setup that is made for everything, and I think you're seeing with it, you know, it's kind of where a bash handle is really aggressive and fits this setup. And similarly, I can also say the fenders that are on this board, they fit to this one as well. It's just a different piece, the fender piece here, a couple of spacers, and they're really functional. So that's what we try to offer folks is it's not just a street cruiser, it's not just a mountain board, but you're getting a little bit of everything.
Yeah, that's a good point. The binding hole is interesting because I think most people are less familiar with boards that have bindings. Me personally, I ride my mountain board all the time, and I've got a binding on my race board too, and it makes a huge difference on maneuverability, especially off-road. Are your binding placements compatible with like the MBS F5 bindings as well?
Yep, they absolutely are. We've got customers that use F5 bindings on their Major.
Nice.
Yep, and of course we've got them both regular on the regular and goofy footed sides.
Sweet. So why don't we go into like some of the design aspects that, in your opinion, make this worth such a premium mark, like low quad boards and the like? What kind of durability things have you looked at that push that price up there?
Sure thing. So one thing people will talk a lot about on the Major is the weight of the board. It's coming in at just under 60 pounds, but a big reason for that is how much is over-engineered in the board so that it can take these really rigorous off-road situations where you're not going to bend an axle, you're not going to break a gear drive, you're not going to have your motors breaking on you. So in that regard, some of the features are that over-engineering, which includes, for instance, the 7185 motor cans. We believe those are the largest motors on a production type electric skateboard, and that's to be able to handle a lot without having issues on you. We've got a fully hardened steel gear drive system. It's 5.3, and that design is in the same vein to really be able to tackle any obstacle without having issues like breaking a plastic gear that can occasionally happen in gear drive systems.
Yeah, as you guys probably don't know, 5.3 gear ratio is actually really high for most skateboards. I think the Lin Power gear drives on the Mboards are about 4.3 ratio. Most belt drives are pretty low, 4 or under. So 5.3 on there, that's pretty high. And to offset, you've got a higher voltage battery in here as well, 14S. What cells have you got in there, or what options do you have?
Yeah, we use Samsung 50S cells, so it's just over 1,500 watt hours here, and the battery is 14S6P.
Nice. Is it traditional battery manufacturing, or is it on a PCB?
It is traditional battery manufacturing. We use cell holders, and then we make sure with our balance wires they are nicely aligned so that when they go out to those last groups, there's no crossover, they're taped down and going into our BMS.
That's nice to hear you guys thinking about that. people who watch my channel will be familiar with all the battery builds that I do, and I always am very caretaking with how I place my wires. So it's good to hear production companies looking out for that, especially ones that are based out of China. Is that right?
Our company is based out of the Washington, D.C. area, but our boards are manufactured in China.
Okay. So Lorentz Boards, the company itself is based out of Washington, but is manufactured in China. How do you guys go through your QC process to make sure that all your boards are up to spec? Because I haven't really heard anyone having major issues with this board yet, which is a pretty good sign.
Sure thing. So one thing that people don't know about the original major, which our company's in business since March 23rd, 2023. We're just over a year mark on that one.
Nice.
And we introduced the board at Esk8Con 2023.
Right.
But really, this board was in development for a year before that. There was a ton of testing going on in this board, both on-road testing and what I would call essentially dyno testing, using rigs that we have for it, to make sure every part could stand up to the test. As a perfect example of that testing, the original major, before we released it, was using a 4.6 gear ratio herringbone POM gear.
Okay.
And we managed to break it.
Yeah.
And we managed to send one of our staff to the hospital in that way.
Oh, that's so good.
Sure, the board was lighter with that setup, but that wasn't okay for us that happened. So that was a case where testing really matters.
Yeah.
Similarly, you got to make sure that your ESCs, your remotes aren't doing anything funky. You're not having any kind of radio frequency triggering phantom signals.
Yep.
All of that stuff is really important to get testing right. And so when we went from the version 1 to 2, functionally the main difference was just the deck and enclosure.
Gotcha.
That only takes a certain amount of testing, and we were able to turn around pretty quickly.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you for the last thing, what was the difference between the V1 and V2? What are the upgrades you guys made? Did you change the ESC at all or anything like that?
So there were a couple of things that we did in order to try to help a little bit with the price while keeping it still a premium product, and maybe try to get at the weight and clearance of the board a little bit.
Yeah.
The most prominent difference you're going to see is the deck and enclosure. We went from this convex sort of hump deck that worked really well with bindings, but the feedback we got was people didn't like riding it without bindings so much. Now we have a essentially flat W concave deck with pretty prominent wings that feels really excellent to ride without bindings, but still works well with the bindings.
And that's the version that I was testing, right? The new V2?
Yep, that is correct.
Cool, yeah.
Other changes we made were we had a motor connector that we were using on the V1 that went straight into the enclosure, like that was where the connection was. And it had this quick pull. It was really slick, but ultimately it was low. And there was a part holding it that was plastic. So I managed to get a failure on that, and it gets really complicated to replace it. We switched to this metal connector that it hooks into the top of the base plate and just keeps it really clear of anything. In order to use that full setup, we actually went to using Teflon wiring to just minimalize it a little bit, make it a little bit smaller and compact. Cool. And then lastly, we redesigned the gear drive system a little bit. It's still an all steel 5.3 ratio, but we made the case a lot more compact so that you would get more ground clearance in off-road riding.
Makes sense.
And it cuts down the weight a little bit.
Sweet. Well, it sounds like I'm going to have a lot of fun finishing my testing on this board. I actually sent my review unit here, my demo unit here, to be used at Esk8Con. So
it's actually being raced.
Awesome, yeah, that's sweet. So we'll be getting that back to do my performance spec testing, which will be awesome. I think it'll be fairly competitive in acceleration and top speed for sure. Sweet, thanks so much for the interview, Chris. And where can we find you guys online?
Sure thing. So mainly we're on Facebook and Instagram. That's Lorentz Boards, and you can find us at lorentzboards.com.
Sweet. And what's your position at the company?
I am the brand manager for Lorentz.
All right, sweet. So if you guys have questions, pester him on Instagram. All right, thanks so much for the interview, and happy racing.
Awesome. Thanks. You too, bro.